Hello and welcome to the first panel discussion at ETCFO Leadership Summit. The first panel discussion is about CFO's Handbook of Uncertainty, and I have the best speakers from the industry for this particular session. My first speaker is Mr. Subbu Subramaniam, the CFO of Triton. Mr. Subramaniam, welcome to the session.
Thank you, Amol.
My next speaker is Ms. Pooja Thakur, the CFO of GSK. Ms. Thakur, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Amol.
My next speaker is Mankiran Chauhan, the MD India SAP Concur. Ms. Chauhan, welcome to the session.
Thank you for having us, Amol.
My next speaker is Mr. TK Sridhar, the CFO of ABB India. Mr. Sridhar, welcome to the session.
Thank you, Amol. Looking forward.
To begin with, we had the opening session with Mr. Manoj Bhargava, who's a businessman, entrepreneur, and a philanthropist who spoke about the sustainability, clean water. And what he said very interestingly is that the CFO should add these kind of qualities in the leadership as well, specifically the sustainability one. This particular panel discussion is about the CFO's Handbook of Uncertainty and how are actually they dealing with the unpredictability. So, Mr. Subramaniam, I will come to you first. And if I ask you specifically, what is the first note in your handbook to deal with the unpredictability?
Thank you, Amol. I think the first thing I would say is taking the risk management committee seriously, because these are things that you think is you're ticking the box while when you are looking at risk, because you think risk is something which is not something which you're actually going to face. It's somewhere in the distant horizon and that you would never possibly meet it. But what happened this year was a lesson for all of us. We talked of VUCA world, I don't know, for the last 3, 4, 5 years, and never ever thinking that an event of this magnitude can even come and hit you. So therefore, I think the first thing is to take, the risk committee deliberations very seriously and actually look at things out of the whack. I mean, what can dramatically go wrong? So that is one aspect, to look at scenarios which you possibly didn't even think was possible. And one other thing we learned, at least we in Titan, and when I was talking to a lot of other CFOs, a lot of them have done this year is actually scenario planning.
Right.
Because at the beginning of the pandemic, we had no idea how this was going to pan out. How long are we going to stay out of our homes? I mean, when is normalcy going to come back? We had absolutely no idea. And am I even going to get revenues at all for the foreseeable future? Was a question like companies like ours, because we are in the retail space, right? And consumer space. And therefore, we face questions of as existential as that. So therefore, you had to work on scenario planning in a very, very big way. And I think from zero revenue for N number of months to maybe, of course, the brighter side is good. I mean, if you're optimistic, it's fine. So I think the main thing here, I would say, is plan for the worst, hope for the best. So scenario planning, I think, for us was a very, very important aspect. Another aspect I keep saying is cash management. Okay, always be cautious of when you never know when an event of this nature can hit you. So ensure that you're tied up your cash at all times. So you may be deploying it, but ensure that you have adequate liquidity to be able to run your business. And fortunately, my business, I don't think that is such a big issue. But I'm sure in infrastructure companies or other companies where debt is a big issue, this can be a major problem. And it depends on your customer's ability to pay you as well. So cash management becomes very, very important. And to this, the fourth one I would add would be cost. Because typically we look at cost only when there's a bad year. When the going is good, you're growing at 15, 20, 25%, you typically tend to ignore cost as an issue.
Right.
But when something like this hits you, you realize, I mean, that you should have possibly worked on cost a little earlier. So I would think working on cost consistently every 2 years or 3 years maximum, you need to revisit your entire cost base. So those are possibly what I would put on the table for now.
Thanks for that note, and I will move to Ms. Thakur now. Ms. Thakur, what is there in your handbook?
In fact, Subbu really stole away the thunder. My first was also the RMCB, as we call it, the risk management.
Right.
Move away from the operational stuff. I mean, at times we're talking about what government can do and, other risks that we see around our consumption and our forecast or supply issues. But I think this is beyond, right? We call it black swan, or we call it unprecedented, but this is something we really do not talk about, right? What if the world comes to a halt, which it literally did? So my first was RMC, the Risk Management Control Board. The second one in my mind is to be brilliant at basics, right? Now we can't afford that we don't have the processes, we don't have the digital capability, we are still signing documents, we're still thinking of compliance and month-end processes. I think these are the conversations that no organization, no CFO is going to really listen. That we missed a tax entry or we missed some statutory requirements. So brilliant at basics is something which is like breathing oxygen day in day out, right? You don't expect that to be a dampener at all. Third, then obviously a combination of this is building on your capabilities of the people, right? So for them to be brilliant at basics and right at first time, you really have to, and also for them to be digitally equipped, right? You really have to spend a lot of time in building the capabilities to the extent, what I feel is, I think earlier we used to think that the CFOs and the leaders are for strategic thinking and the rest everything. I think I'm going to push down even the strategic thinking down, right, to the team. But in my view, the CFOs and the leaders and the CXOs, the leadership definition is only handling bad news now, right? Mm-hmm. How do you react when there is a bad news? Right. That's my definition of leadership now. Are you calm? Are you pushing down? Are you reacting? Do you have a backup plan? Like Subbu mentioned, scenario planning. So there should be nothing which should come like, okay, I don't know, I don't have an answer for it. I don't know where to go, right? So for me, the definition of leadership has changed in last couple of years, and people who can handle this are will remain the right leaders, right, in the system. And one of the aspects that leaders will have to lean upon is always keep your one leg towards networking and outside in view, right? Lean upon what other companies are, irrespective of what, whether it's in pharma company or whichever, doesn't matter, right? The problems are similar. So organization or the sector doesn't matter. So your one leg should always be in networking, have an outside in view, to the extent that if there is global politics, which we generally do not pay attention to, the macroeconomics, and not of India, but global. If there's a war in Middle East and if there's a Trump and China issue, it will eventually impact you, right? Because somewhere it will have impact on your FIIs, and your vendors and customers are invested in stock exchange. So I mean, even you have to see, if not today, 6 months down the line, an oil price going to 21, coming back to 45 or whatever, has an impact on your business, right? So I think that is what a handbook is for me as a CFO. Capabilities building, processes are brilliant at basic, has to be there. I'm not going to really put pressure there, but how much can I handle bad news? So what is my training on that, right? How resilient am I on that? And my outside in my networking, I'm picking up from people who are going through similar, and what have they come up with solutions. So that's important for me.
I think very valuable thoughts, Ms. Thakur. In fact, how to handle the bad news. In fact, sometimes we publish the bad news because we believe in the data which comes from the government side, and we publish that. But I think the networking point was also, important. In fact, and on a lighter note, I would ask all of you to, keep connecting with ETCFO.com more often, because we do a lot of events and summits and webinars. So maybe you can network more. So quite interesting here. Mr. Sridhar, I will come to you. And, not only just a handbook, but I would like you to add a bold chapter called cash flow management in handbook, and, give me your handbook theory.
Thank you, Amol. I think I fully subscribe to what Subbu and Pooja told, right? So I think three things emerged in this, right? First, while I tend to agree with Pooja on why strategic is not so important, but I think strategic mindset for CFOs are undergoing a sea change, right? So then what we used to see growth as a strategy for the earlier years, we are now looking at portfolio management as one of the key strategies for the company, right? So that's number one. And number two, if you want to drive these initiatives, I think the actions are more going to be incremental rather than a long term. So that means we need to really look at cash, which should give us an immediate return. an investment which should really be meaning. And then when it comes to really cash, I think the cash has changed a lot of paradigms at this point of time, right? It was a king earlier, it went to an emperor, and now it is becoming a god, right? So I think without that god, I think you cannot manage the operation, and so therefore cash is definitely an important element for all of us, for the CFOs at least, to keep looking at it day in and day out, right? So I mean, we are a cap goods industry, so Subbu and probably Pooja would come out earlier, but we are people with a lead which is quite longer, right? So we depend upon public investments, we depend upon government. So that means conserving cash and putting it to right use is absolutely an important element for us, right? And this is a topic at all the board meetings, to making how CFOs are taking actions to make sure that the cash position is sustainable in the medium term, right? So that means I mean, also we need to understand that the custom adapting to the new models of what customer is now behaving is one of the strategic mindsets what CFOs in the business have to imbibe in their new way of working, right? So gone are the days when customers used to come and visit our factories to inspect some material and send it out. Today, the factory texting happens remotely, all right? So the invoices travel remotely, right? The bank transactions travel remotely on a very digital form, right? So that being the case, that means our systems, our data, right, and our quality of the data, rather, which we punch in or which we use for a decision making, should be very accurate and high quality. And this makes the entire system work seamlessly, so that there are no leakages, either with respect to time, with respect to money, or with respect to efforts, right? So this is pretty much critical when it comes to managing cash, when managing the resources, and also looking at how you would cater to the needs of the customers as well as other stakeholders. This is my take, Amol.
Okay, I think very valid take, Mr. Sridhar, and I copy you. I mean, people are using data aggressively, the specifically CFOs, and they are taking calls, virtually. In fact, I was talking to an auditor, and he said, in fact, I'm inspecting audits, everything virtually. That's a very, very valid thing that is happening in the CFO fraternity. Ms. Chauhan, I will come to you. And when we spoke about the digital, when we spoke about the data analytics, and how CFOs are aggressively using that, how do you envisage the future of the CFOs?
Thank you for the question, Amol. I think if you look at it, the CFOs, the roles become very much in a spotlight, but they also have a dual challenge in 2021. I think it's about, how do you accelerate the growth in the digital initiatives, and also parallelly focus on preserving or restoring the organization's financial health, depending upon, what that need is. And that acceleration is therefore really focused on that continuous value and, having that agility, like Pooja said, about making sure that you're brilliant at basics. It's the process efficiencies are really there, but from a strategic perspective, you have the strategy set, you have the real-time risk assessment, you're able to make better informed decisions. And that's actually where this accelerated digitalization is really sweeping, not just the finance, of course, but the overall organization as a whole. We've seen the acceleration digital transformation is becoming a primary focus, but it's also about making sure that we're focusing on employee productivity, with the focus on their experience and morale as well. We're seeing more discussions on wellness, productivity measures, and efficiency. Really, the focus on intelligent technologies like AI or ML or NLP, or like both of you said before, about how do you make sure that the processes are automated, whether it's about capturing and processing end-to-end spend, driving the product and the experience, productivity and experience. So if you look at from a today environment perspective, CFOs really are championing transformation efforts that is focused on value. And more broadly, this transformation is going to be achieved by ensuring that the finance processes are optimized, both for efficiency as well as for effectiveness. We're all now preparing for virtual work from anywhere scenarios, and that's the test that each of our current process has to be measured against those yardsticks: efficiency and effectiveness. For example, we know that better employee experience is good for businesses, that companies who have good employee experiences see higher productivity, nearly 20% higher productivity, or 20% higher profitability, lower retention. So replacing manual, clunky paper processes versus consumer grade tool is the need of the hour. Or if you look at whether cash is king or compliance is king, but in the environment today, when you think about risk, and two of you said called out risk is the big area to focus on. You need a system that can automatically capture and ensure that everything that you're spending is getting audited for consistency and transparency. You can build in pre-approvals to your processes. You can control costs before they hit your budget. And I think that's where the use of specialized audit services, AI, technology, to isolate trends and patterns, to make sure that compliance is strengthened, is really about driving that effectiveness of your processes as well. So I think from a CFO perspective, it's both about preparing for growth, planning for recovery, but also looking at everything that we do in the finance function with that yardstick of efficiency as well as effectiveness.
Amol, just to add, to complement to what Manik was saying, it's pretty valid today that I think the business adapting to different business models is becoming a real learning for us, right? The way I think the business models are developing and how we use data to be very efficient in adapting these business models is absolutely becoming a need of the hour today, right? So the execution times have shortened, right? So that means our data sets should be pretty much very high quality, so that our output is also of high quality. I think that's absolutely pretty much clear for us today.
I want to add one other point. I think it has been raised. I just saw Pooja talk about it now, Sridhar to some extent, and Mankiran also, which is, I think, also from a corporate perspective on culture. Okay, and agility for me is one thing. And let me just give you in Titan, about 4 years back, we went through our own internal workshop on something which didn't go right for us during those 1 or 2 years. And one of the things we identified was agility. Okay, and in a way, accountability also. They actually go together. The third, actually, very interestingly, was anticipating and adapting to change. If you look at these three pillars are actually what, if we are done very well, we'll be able to manage a situation like the COVID situation. And I should say that we worked on it for those 4 years, and these are cultural issues. These are not something that you just tell your subordinate, I want this, I want you to be agile tomorrow. It doesn't work that way. You have to demonstrate it from the top, right? And it takes time for these things to seep in. But I think we were well prepared, and I think we did our work well on these 3, 4. The fourth one was, of course, innovation. Again, extremely valid for a situation like COVID. Okay, so somewhere I think we picked on the 4 right pillars on cultural change. And that, if you ask me, helped so much, because when the situation actually demanded, I mean, the level of innovation went up tremendously.
Right.
People thought about different solutions to problems, which, you wouldn't have thought about. We thought about digital transformation as the focus area this year. I mean, we have been doing it for the last 3-4 years, but this year we wanted our digital quotient of the company to go up substantially. So we said we are going to invest in training our people.
Right.
We didn't need to do anything. It just happened in the first 3 months because people simply took on. And today it's a blessing in disguise that this happened, because the adoption of digital platform that we established has gone up multifold. People are just taking it so easily. Right. So the point is, I think at a culture, at an organization level, certain aspects of culture are required so that you are able to meet situations like this.
I think good rejoinder, Mr. Subramaniam and Mr. Sridhar, to what, Ms. Chauhan said. And, I was asking all of you about the handbook point, but I think the point which Ms. Chauhan said specifically about the efficiency, productivity, and need a system, to evaluate the transparency and to maintain the transparency was really valid, in fact, and can be added in the CFO's handbook, which is our topic of the panel discussion. Moving ahead, Ms. Thakur, I will come to you. Yes, the world is still unpredictable. Uncertainty is still there. The pharma companies have done a great work in the last couple of months. But considering the current situation where we are on the threshold of, predictability and unpredictability, I mean, the unpredictability doesn't look that, dangerous now because the vaccine drive has already started. So considering this background, what are the challenges that you see in 2021 for a CFO?
Well, so first of all, I think the whole faith in pharma companies and healthcare has really gone up, right? So it's come with a huge responsibility on us. if you ask me, it has been the biggest, I mean, the world in pharma company has probably shrunk by 20 years, if I may say that, because we were quite used to uh, bringing up molecules in 8 to 10 years, vaccine development and all. And now people don't have that kind of time. And if you've done once in 9 months, I don't think for the next vaccine, they're going to wait for, 5 to 8 years or 10 years. This is, if you've done it for COVID, you do it for other vaccines as well. So first of all, the faith has gone up, but the responsibility of the pharma companies have also gone up. That's one thing. I think post-COVID, what do I see? Now the world in India may change very differently from the world outside India, right? Because the pharma company is the innovative part is mostly outside India. In India, pharma company is more of branded generics, right? But so I'm going to concentrate first on India pharma industry. How do I see it changing? I think the entire, and to add to Mankiran's point of what is the other expectation from CFO, is also the entire go-to-market model may change, right, for the pharma industry. The traditional, the reps, having 5,000 reps meeting 100,000 doctors or 500,000 doctors or HCPs, will that even exist or not? Because probably the doctors do not want to meet, and probably the reps also don't want to meet, right? I mean, now that's why you have telemedicine, you have teleconsultation. So the whole idea is that innovation space, and what Subbu mentioned, one is innovation in the product line, the other one is innovation in the go-to-market commercial execution, right? That is the space where the entire concentration in India pharma is going to come up. Let me tell you, while we are called regulated, but we are really not, we are really fragmented sector as a pharma. You have some 50,000 pharma companies, you have a similar amount of stockists. One stockist gives, unlike FMCG, caters to at least 500 pharma companies. So, and they're still on checks, right? So it's the kind of transformation this is going to bring in, both in supply chain and the go-to-market model. How do you connect to the doctors? What do doctors want to listen? They're not going to give that whole sampling and all that stuff. I mean, it's going to be a very different world. And that is where your innovation, how agile are you? And, it's going to become critical for us, not only in developing new molecules, but also executing. So for us, I think, honestly, it's going to be a game changer. This is what COVID has done. I think it's going to be game changer both internationally and also to the India pharma industry. So I'm actually quite excited about the post-COVID-19 scenario as to what all people will adapt to, or I hope they don't go back to the old ways of working and they really look forward to the new change that's going to bring in.
Ms. Thakur, we have seen more excitement from the pharma companies in 2021 because of the COVID drive has started, vaccination drive, and more importantly, you said that the faith has gone up.
Yes.
Even the share prices have gone up for the pharma
Not only
companies.
that, the amount of PE investments, right?
Exactly.
$1.6 billion invested in just 1 year. I don't think it's unprecedented, not happened earlier. So I think everybody sees the shape is going to change, and I think, and a lot is also going to change with the China situation for us, the import and how much can we bring it in within India. So I think it is something which is going to be a game changer for sure. Right. And I'm glad I'm in the right industry right now.
Oh, great, Ms. Thakur. We are happy that you are there. Mr. Sridhar, I will come to you and your views on the opportunities that you see for the capital goods and infrastructure sector specifically in 2021. Obviously, you saw that the pharma sector is doing fairly well, and the CFO, Ms. Thakur, is quite excited about it. But that might be the case for the other sectors or the other industries. So, how is it for you specifically in the capital goods or infrastructure sector?
Yeah, I think thanks for that. Amol, it's like this, right? So earlier, if you look at ABB, so people will resonate with an steel sector or a building sector or an oil and gas is where we used to really look at ABB. But today, I think these are the sectors which are very conventional and they are pretty much very sluggish at this point of time because of the real capital intensiveness of those particular structures, right? But what is moving pretty fast and where we find absolute traction is around data centers, the food and beverage, the pharma is what she was saying, right? And then about renewables and metros and the rails, which are transportation, mobility. These are some of the sectors which are definitely going to really grow faster than what the conventional sectors grow. So that what does it mean? So that means to us, the customer base expands. The markets are quite different. That means the behaviors of these particular customers could be quite different, even though I'm selling the same product, right, to a conventional sector. So our business models, again, I come back, have to be fine-tuned to the requirements of this particular sectors. And definitely it means, I think, managing the risk of this expanded customer base for a CFO, to have a strong credit management platform and more data which seamlessly flows when you take decisions is absolutely damn critical for us, right? And then of course when we talked about compliance, we talked about the risk management perspective. So these are all some of the things which play out when you look at these particular decision making. Apart from this, because we are also exposed to quite a few external factors, three important factors which make a lot of impact to us is the prices of commodities. Commodities, if you look at it, be it aluminum, be it steel, and be it copper, I think over a period of time now have gained quite a bit towards what they were earlier. Same with fuel as well. And look at the currencies. The currencies, right? If you look at a typical US dollar, 4 to 5% increase in a year. But we are an European company. And if you look at the Swiss franc, right, it's 13% increase year on year. And it is higher than inflation, higher than anything else. And that means I need to look at how could I use my India as a base for exports, because if you are an importer, then you really get a double whammy out of that particular factor. So, and proper hedging policies. These are very few, these are something which are very fine, which used to be quite normal in a way going scenario. But in this change scenario, it assumes more importance and how to train your people as well. So this is what my input to you, Amol, on this.
Absolutely, Mr. Sridhar. So, Ms. Chauhan, I will come to you. Again, we are talking about the risk management, the digital innovation, and allow me to then learn it from you. How are CFOs actually managing risks and planning for recovery post, the COVID-19 crisis, by strategically positioning and utilizing assets? And if you could add to it and tell me more about how are they selecting where to channelize funds for innovation?
Sure. I think everybody in the panel, everybody listening will agree that the pandemic has forever changed how businesses operate, and what we're facing today as the economic climate as you enter 2021 is very different than what any one of us originally anticipated. We were speaking about operational agility before, but we're seeing that maintaining that agility in the organization, I think like Subbu said or like Pooja said, is really the only way to navigate uncertainty. And while most people will say that you're confident of your organization's capabilities in areas like emerging technology or managing regulatory compliance, there is a worry that the CFOs have about underperformance as they manage cost, or what the revenue growth will be, or the operational agility in that organization. And that's actually, this relatively lower level of confidence is very telling, because it's often because of operational agility that companies can really bring in the discipline in their spending. So you can make strategic pivots when needed, whether it's for revenue growth or for cost reduction. And I think, 2020 was that lesson for all of us in your chapter 1 or in the handbook for us to really build on, right? So as we talk about being resilient, it's really important that we have visibility into costs and control over how businesses are spending money. And that becomes the baseline from an operational agility perspective. But the good thing is that with intelligent technology in finance, finance teams have the ability to keep that eye on the spend. You can find ways to tighten the purse strings and really redirect cash flow on strategic priorities, which is what we did in 2020 as well, right? And back to your second part of the question, which is where are we seeing innovation? Where are we seeing CFOs channel funds? I see it in 3 areas. One, of course, is business continuity, business maintenance. The second is really on that technology adoption, on digitalization. And the third is really about that momentum regaining. So if you look at the first aspect of business continuity, the focus is really on how do we reduce the risk of supply chain disruption? How do we contain costs better? I think one of you said, how do we make that a cultural, part of the cultural process, that we're not re-looking at costs, restructuring once in a lifetime, but on a more regular basis? How do we ensure regulatory compliance? How do we focus on making sure employee safety and well-being is taken care of, reducing risk of fraud, or how do we reshore operations and production and consolidate the business portfolios and categories? As an example, organizations are looking to, how do we get better spend control and compliance with a single connected process, whether it's an expense process that can break away from those data silos, so you can get better, in just managing compliance and having that automated processes like capturing receipts or mileage or expense tracking, or I think Sridhar, you said about the invoice, automation. All of those are areas where time-consuming task and data entry can go with giving you that effort back from a continuity perspective. I've spoken about technology before, but if you look at the top priority for the CFOs is really therefore becoming, how do they use data and analytics to improve the customer's digital experience? How do we accelerate, automate operations, invest in new areas? So you can significant progress that we can see therefore in the digital transformation goals. And finally, it's about regaining momentum. CFOs are looking to scale the business by expanding business portfolios or categories to support certain opportunities that the pandemic has presented, whether it's about pursuing inorganic growth or accelerating product innovation or increasing offshore production or just really focusing on employee productivity and satisfaction. So I think as companies get prepared on how they navigate the future uncharted waters, everyone's really looking at, very keenly aware of the uncertainties. We also know that the impact of the virus outbreak is really not known, it's really not known for years to come. But organizations are really using this time to focus on the fundamentals. Like Pooja said, I think getting brilliant at basics, getting effective, efficient technologies in place, identifying and rectifying weaknesses in areas like cost control, and then focusing on the health and safety of the employees. So, that's at least the way my perspective on it.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for the perspective.
Another area which has become pretty much important for the CFOs is how do we manage the real estate? So real estate optimization, the sort of when topic is always on the now CFOs prerogative to understand how they are put to optimum use, right? So, and I take away an information, the clue which Manikaran gave, that about cost optimization. It's just not only on the value chain, but also it comes on the enablers for the value chain, which real estate is, right? I think till now we were looking at real estate as a growth perspective, and today we are looking at how do we really optimize the use of real estate to such a level that we have the minimum cost with the maximum productivity out of that. Yeah? So sweating the assets is the mantra today.
Very important thoughts, and thanks for that note. Mr. Subramaniam, I will come to, I would like to have your view specifically about, the gold, because that sector belongs to you. We have seen, substantial demand in the jewelry segment in last couple of quarters, I must say. So is it sustainable? Is it a pandemic buying, or just people are buying to save it? And as a CFO, what lesson do you learn out of it? Because uncertainty is still there. And you never know, people are not still going for the luxury buying, like luxury watches or the diamonds, but they're going for jewelry. So what is the lesson that you learn out of this?
Well, as far as jewelry is concerned, I think there are different angles to it. One is the fact that gold as an asset class has been very attractive this year is one reason. Okay, why? And it's a safe haven asset. Whenever you have a pandemic situation or you are not sure whether the stock market is actually a bubble, and when the dollar is where it is, so people and interest is being where they are, people would tend to go towards gold as a safe haven investment. So that is one aspect which I think is a driver for this year's demand to some extent. So that reflects in our high coin sales, for example. This year our coin sales was substantially higher than the norm. And that is understandable because of the investment requirement for gold. But I think the other aspect of gold is that in India, at least, it's a cultural issue. You buy gold not just for yourself, but for the future. It's something that you pass on to your daughter. It's something which is required for occasions, for weddings, and so on and so forth, right? So that demand is actually very inelastic in India. Okay, whatever happens, whatever be the state of the economy, people would still buy gold when it comes to either the occasion, which is most probably a wedding or something of that nature in the family. That's one aspect. So people don't shy away from that. And in a year like a pandemic year, where actually a lot of the spends on other categories had come down dramatically, particularly travel. Travel is a big category. These days, households spent a lot of money on travel. This year, it was practically zero, right? Nobody traveled out. Eating out was almost out for at least 6 to 9 months this year, right? And therefore, a lot of savings. And I was talking to a banker this morning, and he said, the savings bank accounts are all ballooning. Everybody's savings is ballooning. This is hard data. So this is one thing we said we are betting that Q3, that is the October-December quarter, will do well for us, because we said people are going to be saving. They want to feel nice. They can't buy. They won't be going out and doing much. But why won't they buy gold? And unfortunately, it's worked out that way. Now, the point is, yes, there is also the fear that maybe some of them is pent-up demand, because we had no sales practically in the first quarter. I mean, as close to zero as it can be. But the point is that post-Diwali this year, we have seen the demand sustain. That's the good news. So it's not just that there was a pent-up demand, and I was just talking about this before the event, that apparel, for example, did very well between October and November, and it fell after that. To some extent, it has to go with gold rates, because gold rates softened a little in the last month and a half. So there may be a revival of demand because of that, but I think it's a combination of all of that. But I believe that in India, gold is going to be, at least jewelry buying, will be very, very stable. I mean, there will be 5% up and down, between years, but otherwise it should be largely in place. So I don't believe that's an issue at all. So jewelry should continue. For us, what is interesting is that even the other categories of ours, which is watches and eyewear, is almost back to normal, just close to our 100% before the pandemic, which is a good news, which means that people are now coming out and saying, yeah, I need to now start buying. It's over. And as I said, savings are substantially higher. So you will start seeing people. So on luxury products, yes, you're right. We also witnessed a significantly lower diamond sales in the first 6 months. The first and second quarter was really poor, and absolutely understandable, because if I buy anything, I'll buy gold because it's an asset class, not diamonds. We are seeing that revival, fortunately, which is again a good indicator that I think the consumer is back, which augurs well for the economy, consumption economy. So I think we should be back to normalcy. We are actually in the jewelry business back to normalcy in a way, but overall as an economy for consumption, I think we are pretty much there.
Okay, let me take one more important question with all of you, and we'll start it with Ms. Thakur. Where we are today. I mean, everybody believes in India Inc. that March quarter is going to be, very important, because that will actually reveal the true colors. But considering the zero budget approach, the scenario planning and cost cutting measures that the CFOs, took in last couple of quarters, Ms. Thakur, are you confident enough to invest in your capex or make a lot of capex plans going ahead in 2021 or 2022 now? Or you will just try to maintain your handbook with whatever the way you can manage it right now? Or will you be more ambitious going ahead?
Amol, I think I'll probably still wait and watch, right? In the sense that, yes, things are bouncing back, GST collections have gone up, jewelry is doing well, home consumption has gone up, right? But there are still lots of sectors, and overall the GDP will be a decline, right, this year.
Right.
Only to bounce back next year, 21, 22. It's an 8 to 9%, but I'll not rush into increasing the capacity, capital. We still have lots of capacity, honestly, in most of the sectors, including pharma, unutilized capacity. So we'll still wait and watch which way how's the consumption coming back, and what kind of innovations are coming, and maybe even new ways of working are coming, right? So I don't think, and it's not only for pharma, but in most industries, they'll start investing in capex immediately. So I think it's still some time, more an assessment to be done to really understand the the real GDP, which is the manufacturing, sector of India, which will generate the future employment, right? That's where it is. And especially with global politics, what's happening with China and US and other countries, how much is outsourcing is going to be done in India. So I think a lot is going to change with all these political changes as well, the change of powers and our own consumption stories. So wait and watch, not immediately 21, 22, I don't see, but yes, I mean, if everything goes well, then maybe long-term plans scenarios will start by end of 21, 22, and something for the future probably.
Mr. Sridhar, what is your view? Will you wait and watch, or will you just go aggressively and, oh, now the future belongs to me and let me invest, something like that? How?
No, certainly it's not the case like what you are optimistic, right? So I think as what we were talking about, business continuity will continue to remain the focus.
Okay.
Right? So that means we'll be selective about what we want to invest for. It doesn't mean that it's going to be a zero capital budgeting. It will be there, right? And what is required. And to be honest, I think we did not, while we were very focused on what investments we make, we did make some investments. We expanded our facilities for robotics. But we know that robotics is going to be the future growing market in ABB India. And so it was a very strategic decision to be, before the market picks up, you are there with the facility and the capacity to handle that, right? So likewise, I think that's the place where we would like to invest. And other thing which will happen for even for manufacturing industries like us is to invest in different business models, right? And to grow together with the customers, right? For example, I think we just now introduced an ABB E-Mart where people can select and buy products on an e-commerce platform. So that's an investment by itself, right? So I mean, those type of investments would come in, and it would not be something. I think it would be a good spread between hard and a soft investment which will happen, rather than just only hard investment as what we used to normally see in terms of physical assets. So that's my take on it.
Valid thoughts, Mr. Sridhar. Ms. Chauhan, the CFOs are talking about maintaining the business continuity, which is the priority for them. Considering that, I'm sure you must be talking to a lot of CFOs. What is the sense that you are getting in terms of investing in technology? Which are the top 3 technologies where CFOs are investing aggressively and heavily? I have been, listening from Mr. Sridhar about data analytics and, robotics and so many of these things. So what are these 2-3 things that you see where CFOs are investing aggressively?
I think it's a great question. I think when you think about digital and financial transformation, I would say that there's a recent Gartner report that I read that I thought that categorized this whole thinking in a very nice 4-lane approach. One is the fast lane approach, right? Initiatives that were implemented or amplified during the lockdown. So we will see CFOs and companies take them to the finish line, whether it was about the remote or a hybrid workplace or customer interactions that digitally now happen, or really the number of customers we've seen go live on an SAP Concur solution during lockdown has been significant because people have used this opportunity to accelerate some decisions. The second, I think, is really around that growth lane, right? And where opportunities have emerged for digital adoption, whether it's about regulations have changed to enable more digital products. As an example, maybe e-signatures now being more compliant, which has got more revenue avenues for companies to accelerate. Then I think the third one is really this fix-it lane, which is to say, wow, we didn't know this process was broken, but the pandemic has put the spotlight on the fact that there are whether it's significant, whether supply chain mismatch or just broken processes that therefore need the investment. And then there are some that are just in the slow lane, initiatives that were maybe important before the pandemic, but more important, more pressing requirements have, have come up, and therefore they no longer are as important. From a technology perspective, I agree, on both analytics as well as robotics, RPA, both very important. If you look through process automation has really brought in that speed, efficiency, and cost optimization for finance, as a function. And more focus is shifted from policy formulation to from preparation of data to having more data, which is more proactive, more insightful, so that then you could do your zero-based budgeting or plan for rolling forecasts, or just having that visibility into data has become much more, much more important than it has before. So given if you look at the use of RPA, that's become the de facto automation choice for finance teams, and any process, whether it's any process that needed human intervention or human judgment, is going to get taken over. So both the RPA as well as the need to have better visibility into decision making in a more real-time fashion brings in the spotlight on analytics as well.
Okay, thanks for that note, Ms. Chauhan. And Mr. Subramaniam, I will ask the same question that I asked to Mr. Sridhar and Ms. Thakur. How do you see 2021 from your desk? Are you going to invest heavily, or you will just wait and watch, or go slow? For you, at least the gold is, glittering. So you may have a different view here.
Yeah, I mean, in our case, I think it's different. Fortunately, we are a fairly asset-light company by model, by the way we are structured. Also, we are largely into franchisees, and so our investment actually is not entirely done by us. It's done by a lot of people. It's crowdsourced in a way. So in that context, I think we think there's tremendous opportunity this year for us to gain share even more, because the rest of the even the organized jewelry sector, for example, may be weaker than us. So I would push the button on investment, not just in terms of network rollout, even on brand. I'll say I would also invest more on brand. I would make it really strong. I would push every lever which is required to get my growth to be to heights which I would not have seen possibly earlier. So that's what I would do.
Okay, I think the clock is ticking, but I still have like two very, very important questions. And, for all of you, to begin with, Ms. Thakur, Finance Minister, is going to present a budget day after tomorrow. And, it's going to be a remarkable budget. That's what our unusual budget. Everybody's expecting a lot from it. We have big hopes from the union budget. So what is your wish list? What would you like Ms. Sitharaman to present in her budget?
Other than the personal tax to go down, I hope so. No, but I mean, I really hope there is a lot of focus on infrastructure, right? Because that is the basic investment that the country needs, and a lot rides on how well the infrastructure is driven, because including companies like us who need cold storage, who need expansion, who need quick connection with the patients and customers. So I hope there's a huge investment in infrastructure. And in terms of duties and taxes, I think we're pretty okay. In the sense, custom duty can always come down, but I think the corporate taxes are at 25% is low. But yes, if she can do something on the personal tax, great.
Okay, Mr. Sridhar?
I think a couple of things are there in my mind, apart from the incentives, and the infrastructure spend, what is almost the focus. I think getting the money to the states, right? So is very important for the infrastructure funding, right? So policies are announced, but I thought the trickle down the funnel is very important, as what anyone would say, for the water to come out, right? So that's something I think we need to have an efficient system to handle that. And the next is about the credit support to the MSMEs. So MSMEs are the backbone to all big industries like us, right? And if they suffer, we suffer along with them, right? So the corporates can help them to a certain extent, but I think quite a few, the sustainable model would be an all-around spend or a holistic spend, which happens through the government as well. And the last is about how do we make this, removing the barriers of execution, right, of these particular policies is pretty much important, right? And along with it comes a development of a world-class transport system for us for the logistics of the movement. So that's pretty very critical if we want to move material faster in this GST world, which gives us that flexibility, right? That's pretty much important, be it on roads, be it on rail, be it on air, and this thing. I think that's something which I would look forward, apart from the other things what Pooja added in the personal tax and the other tax levels, right? So I only hope in order to spiral the economy, the corporate taxes again are not increased. So that's, as long as that is there, that's something that's also good for us.
Right, Mr. Sridhar. Ms. Chauhan?
I think from my perspective, I hope to see an adoption of digitalization even in the government processes, as well as the drive towards making it easier for everybody to do business.
Okay, Mr. Subramaniam?
I would focus on employment creation. I would say create jobs and put more money into the hands of the poor, the people. Okay. Finally, I think that's the only way you'll grow the economy. Finally, at the end of the day, you have to have a consumption economy. It has to, and we know that services is the biggest sector, and therefore encouraging investment in manufacturing is a great thing, because manufacturing does create a lot of jobs. So that is one aspect, but also areas which have unfortunately got hit very badly this year: tourism. Okay, and anything to do with tourism. Those are areas which also create a lot of jobs. The gig economy creates lots of jobs. I think, therefore, getting people to employ back, a lot of at least 10, 20 million people, I think would be the goal. And that would I think, hopefully reignite the economy.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Subramaniam. Now, quickly a rapid fire, very quick 2 questions to each one of you. Ms. Thakur, I'm starting with you. Breaking the Chakravyuh is the theme of our event. So if I ask you specifically, how should CFOs or the finance professionals break the Chakravyuh of the uncertainty, unpredictability going ahead in 2021? What is the weapon do you think they should carry?
So I say that, I mean, it's not only for cash, but it's for balance sheet. It's my favorite thing to say. P&Ls get you promotion, balance sheet get you fired. Okay, so please keep an eye on your cash, and that's your weapon. So keep a close eye on where your balance sheet is moving.
Okay, Mr. Sridhar.
So devil is in detail. So data is very crucial.
Okay, interesting. Mr. Subramaniam.
My main thing was, I think we learned a lot from the pandemic in the last 1 year. We have gained so much about ourselves, and we have tried to do things in a far better way. I don't want any of them being frittered away. I think these are life lessons that we've learned, and I would assume, I hope that we can carry on with this.
Okay, Ms. Chauhan.
I'd say prepare the organization for agility and keep that focus on both efficiency and the effectiveness of everything, every short-term and the long-term goal that we now relook at.
Okay, interesting. And this last question, which is a soft question, not related to balance sheet or handbook or even the CFOs, but just a personal question, and starting with you, Ms. Chauhan. What is that one thing would you like to do when situation is absolutely normal? Maybe we are vaccinated and we are absolutely in a pre-COVID era and we have forgotten the COVID-19 world. What is that one thing would you like to do?
Never use the word new normal again.
Quite interesting. Mr. Subramaniam, what will you do?
Well, holiday.
Very interesting.
Yeah, I want to travel. Yes, I'm missing it.
Yeah, you also said sometime back that there should be a focus on the tourism from the finance minister. Well, Mr. Sridhar.
I think we have not met our colleagues in the office for quite some time. I think probably an offsite meeting would be the one which I would like to really live with now going forward.
Fantastic. Ms. Thakur, you're already in the office. Maybe you will have a different.
I'm already in the office. I've done lots of vacations as well last year.
Wow.
So I'm going to actually concentrate on the business. I'm really looking forward to do something, a real paradigm shift to the pharma industry.
Great. That was the first session of the day, specifically the panel discussion. Thank you so much, Ms. Chauhan, Mr. Subramaniam, Mr. Sridhar, and Ms. Thakur, for your participation and sharing remarkable perspective on this panel discussion. Thank you so much for your participation.
Thank you for having us, Amal.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Bye-bye.